Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, sisters, viewers and friends of Iqra TV. My name is Iqbal Bana, I'm your host. Welcome to Real Talk, another edition of this program that comes to you every week on a Monday. As I keep saying, I invade your privacy on a Monday evening. You may be busy trying to get the food ready or getting your kids settled down, or the fathers must be coming home from work and trying to relax, and I come and interfere in your lifestyle. But I'm sure that the issues and the people I bring on my program will bring some interesting information or awareness to you on some of the issues which challenge and confront our community in this country and abroad to a large extent as well. Every week I try and bring people to you who have some considerable experience either in the political, educational, health or other environments that touches our lives on a day-to-day basis. Over the last few weeks, as you know, we have been talking about the atrocities and the genocide that has been going on in Gaza in particular, but also in the wider West Bank area, which is actually not very well publicized at this moment in time. We have seen nearly 500 people killed in the West Bank area over the last 3 months. Over 25,000 people have been killed, or as some people say, butchered and murdered in Gaza itself. It depends, which side you're on and which frame of mind you're looking at this issue from. That is 25,000 is the official figure, but as many people will know that the number of people who've been killed and murdered is well over 25,000 people. Now we know that this all started on the 7th of October, and we have on this program said that we condemn what happened on the 7th of October. Islam forbids the taking of any lives, and particularly those of innocent victims. And we know that on that day, lots of innocent people were killed and people were taken away as hostages to be held as prisoners. And again, in Islam, that is not acceptable. And we condemn what Hamas did on the 7th of October. But what Israel did following that attack is absolutely unacceptable and totally inhuman and totally brutal, and has been described as a genocide and another Holocaust in a way. Although, because as many people say, Gaza is a concentration camp, and people who were killed in the Holocaust were in a concentration camp, and that is why it was defined as a Holocaust. So in a way, some people have defined as a Holocaust as well. So today, I've got two people with me who will shed some light on the politics of what is happening in this country. Many people have marched. We saw 1 million people march a few weeks ago. We saw marches every Saturday taking place, not just in London, but throughout the UK. Every city and town we have seen young people, old people, Muslim, non-Muslim, white, black, of all colors, all faiths, no faiths, coming together, asking for a ceasefire and for peace to prevail in Gaza. Muslim candidates or Muslim elected persons, whether members of parliament or at local authority level as councillors, particularly those who have been members of the Labour Party, have faced enormous pressure to resign from the Labour Party following the statements made by their leader, Keir Starmer, who has sanctioned in a way the approval of what Israel has been doing in Gaza by saying that Israel has the right to withdraw water, electricity, medicine, etc. And this has upset a lot of people, including myself, a long-standing ex-member of the Labour Party for 40-odd years. I was thrown out of the Labour Party because I campaigned against Keir Starmer at the last general election on the issue of Palestine, and I have no regrets about that. I have been asked many times to come back, but I've said no. So this is the issue I want to talk about. And before we'll be going for break soon, let me introduce you to my guest. The first one, I'm sure as soon as you see him, you'll be very impressed with the person that I'm going to introduce you. Is Councillor Amar Anwar, was a Labour councillor until last week on the Kirklees Council in from Ravensthorpe in Dewsbury, and then last week he decided he could not longer support the Labour policies on Palestine and decided to resign in a very emotional, tearful speech made at the council meeting. So, Assalamu alaikum, Councillor Amar Anwar Sahab. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking your time out and spending your time with me today. And we want to talk about why you resigned, inshallah, very soon. So thank you for coming. The other guest I have is Muhammad Ali Islam. So we have the young person, we have the existing sitting councillor, and a young person who wants to be a prospective councillor, who's only 20 years old, has stood for election a couple of times in the Bradford area in Manningham, and wants to see a seat change taking place. He wants to fight those councillors who have steadfastly refused to resign from the Labour Party, from the Bradford Council, for whatever reasons that they have come up with. And they're like many, many millions of young people who see that as a betrayal of the people of Palestine, and particularly people of Gaza. They're not listening to the voices of the people who are asking them to resign, as some of the other councillors have done, like Councillor Asaf Hasib Anwar in Burnley, people in Walsall, people in Blackburn and other parts of the country, including Bradford and other areas, where they've resigned on a matter of principle, steadfastly, apart from one or two people in Bradford. Most of the councillors, in fact, we would say the majority of the Muslim councillors, have refused to take any action against their own party. So this is a debate that is raging throughout the country at the moment. So can I welcome you both? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Councillor Amar Anwar Sahab, thank you for coming. All the way from Dewsbury.
Thank you for having me.
More than welcome to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be on ICRA TV.
Thank you. And you made this decision last week to obviously resign. Oh, you know, there must have been quite a difficult decision to make, being a long-standing member of the Labour Party.
Well, as you know, the attacks on 7th of October, they were atrocious. We all condemned them, but like you've stated, what Israel did after that, it's a genocide act. It's the biggest genocide since the Holocaust.
Oh, definitely.
Or even Genghis Khan, you could put him in there as well. And we were told to stay in the party, fight. So me, with along 17 other councillors, decided to condemn Keir Starmer on the comments he made on the LBC radio show. We also asked for his resignation. After we made that move, our leader, Cathy Scott, of Kirklees Labour group, she phoned a couple of councillors saying, why did you do that? You are under threat now of getting removed at your next elections. Your Labour Party won't give you the tickets. So from the very beginning, after October the 7th, we was told we couldn't attend any protests by the Labour group leader.
All right.
We were told we couldn't put any statuses on our social media. We were told we can't wear any badges, flags or any sort of nature representing Palestine. It's become a dictatorship. Unfortunately, I have to say this nation is mother of all democracies. And if we have parties like the Labour Party who are having a dictatorial regime on us, what democracy is there left?
So freedom of expression is now out of the window.
It's out of the window.
Right.
You are being told what to wear, what to say, where to go. And for me, last week, I returned to the country on Monday after 3 weeks break. And on Monday, Keir Starmer released a statement saying Labour Party are dropping the 2014 stance on recognising Palestine as a state when elected in government. He goes, we will not recognise Palestine until Israel doesn't recognise Palestine. I mean, who on earth is Israel to recognise Palestine?
That is going against the UN resolution.
Yes, Israel is not recognised itself as a state. It's an occupier. So that was the final straw for me. I'd made my mind up. And then on Tuesday, my daughter, who is very attached to me, my 5-year-old, her name is Benazir. I named her after the late Prime Minister of Pakistan, Benazir Bhutto. So we were watching the news and she was on her mum's phone, sat next to me on YouTube watching cartoons. And as I was scrolling through TikTok on my TV, videos came up from the Arab media and they show some gruesome images of what's going on in Palestine. So she just watched that for a few seconds. We went to bed. The next day I took her to nursery. I brought her back. I went out and I came home and she goes, Dad, where were you? I said, I was at work. She goes, oh, what have you done about the videos you were watching last night? That just absolutely destroyed me.
Right.
I thought, how can I answer my 5-year-old daughter that question? So I made my mind up Tuesday night that I was going to resign the following night at the full council. So on Wednesday morning, I phoned all my colleagues. I made them aware of my intentions. One of the colleagues turned around and said to me, you're going to lose £5,000 off your committee money.
All right.
So in return to that, I said they could keep all my council allowance. I don't care, this cause is greater than my chairship of a committee or me being a Labour councillor.
Sure.
And as you all know and saw what I did at the full council, and it's a shame that there were 17 Muslim councillors and at least some of them should have followed me. And today we would have ended the nightmare that is in Kirklees of the Labour Party. But unfortunately it never happened.
I mean, obviously, Councillor Muhammad Amar Anwar Sahab, may Allah give you strength, because you're a conscious, obviously, group. And obviously, even 5-year-olds are having, being affected by what they see on the screen. There's no doubt about it. And we'll come back to that. And then I know I've been on several marches in Kirklees and several other discussions, forums, and there's been a huge call for the Muslim councillors in Kirklees, like in Bradford and other places, to show their mettle and resign on principle from the Labour Party. Yet they haven't done that, except one or two. But I mean, let me turn to Muhammad Ali Islam, a young man from Bradford, born and bred in this area. You've previously, at a very young age, wanted to become a councillor. Were you wanting to become a councillor for the Labour Party, or were you going to be an independent councillor when you stood last time?
So when I was 18, I stood as the first ever and youngest independent candidate for Manningham, Bradford.
Right.
I stood as an independent, and the
At
reason
the age of 18?
At the age of 18, yes.
Wow.
I was the youngest ever, alhamdulillah. And our campaign members were also young, and it was a true privilege to stand at that age. And I will be honest, a lot of people looked at me and said, "You're just a kid, you're a young man, what can you do?"
Yeah.
But then I always used to quote Sultan Mehmed, who was a 12-year-old that was the Sultan of an empire. I mean, when we get young people that are privileged enough to, for example, become Hafiz al-Quran at the age of 5, at the age of 12, at such a young age, we don't criticize them. We don't say, "Oh, you're just a boy." We say, "MashaAllah, that's a beautiful thing and a brilliant thing." So when I stood as an 18-year-old, my objective was to make it clear first that we're not happy with the leadership in our community, and we're not happy with the stance of the mainstream political parties depriving our ward. I'm from a place, Manningham. Manningham, let's say, was the birth of the Labour Party, but throughout years we have seen neglect, deprivation and incompetent leaders.
It's one of the most deprived wards in the country.
It is, yeah. It falls under the 10% deprived wards in England. And that's really sad to see, because that's my home. And I know that my home is a beautiful place filled with a rich history and heritage. I mean, people from London used to come to Manningham. That's how beautiful it is. So before the October 7th happened, I was standing as an 18-year-old, and the first year when I stood against the mainstream party, alhamdulillah, I received 1,600 votes, 1,621. And that's a privilege, and I was an independent.
That's normally a winning margin.
It normally is, yeah, but because Manningham is such a big place, and it's been a Labour stronghold for years.
Yeah.
So the second year I was a 19-year-old, and I stood as a 19-year-old, and alhamdulillah, as a 19-year-old, I achieved 2,153 votes.
Wow.
So we increased our vote margin.
You could have got out into Member of Parliament then.
We could have.
Majority, if you got that down. Yeah.
So, I mean, we've all seen what's happened on our screens, and we've seen the blatant hypocrisy and double standards, not only of this government, but also the Labour Party. We saw when it came to the resistance of Ukraine, unequivocal support was shown. It was shown in clear, crystal, HD quality. I mean, schools as well. Schools were holding fundraisers, were selling badges, selling crayons and whatnot. The Labour Party, Keir Starmer, was meeting regularly at Estonia with the military, and he was back and forward supporting them unconditionally. But then when it came to a genocide, a literal real-life genocide, which you've gone into detail of, over 25,000 killed, all of a sudden he's lost his voice, and he's showing his right-wing extremism. He's showing his real, true colours. And I always say this, that those who are silent when it comes to the time of genocide, they are complicit in the genocide, because they are allowing the killing of innocent children. And many British Muslims out there believe that the Labour Party is enabling the genocide by not speaking up and instead supporting the colonial-minded state of Israel.
And that is why a lot of people in the community throughout the country have asked Labour councillors in particular to show some strength and solidarity with the people
Absolutely.
of Palestine and Gaza. And very, very few, like Councillor Anwar Sahab, has actually done that. Why do you think it is that, Bradford Council has got lots of Muslim members? I mean, like you say, you've got 17 members. Your other colleagues, 16, are still not taking your lead or following. Do you feel that they don't care about these issues? I mean, you said you rang every one of them and asked them whether they'd join you. Or even if they don't join you, they make a statement of... I know they all made a statement saying, we'd like Labour Party to call for a ceasefire. But when they know that the leader of the Labour Party has refused to do that, right, How do you feel that these people's conscience can be sustained? Do they not feel any guilt?
I mean, the group decision over in Kirklees was we stay in the party and we fight.
Right.
But we've been there 3 months. We've wrote over half a dozen letters to Keir Starmer. He's not responded to any of our letters or emails. He does not care. His stance is very clear that I am supporting Israel. There's no two ways about it. It's a one-way mindset he's got. And where it concerns my Labour councillors in Kirklees, they should have followed in suit. But like I said previously on other interviews, the councillors are prioritising their committee chairs, their cabinet positions, and their extra allowance that they get.
The pay packet.
The pay packet.
Right.
They do not want to leave the pay packet. But my message to them tonight is, on the day of judgment, when you stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will be answered for the Palestinian peoples.
Well, definitely.
And alhamdulillah, I can say today, I will be stood shoulder to shoulder with my Shaheed Palestinian brothers and sisters, whilst you will stand in front of them with your head held down in shame. And
well, yeah, I mean, we've had Maulana Fazaldad, Maulana Hayat Khan on my program, and we've spoken about this subject, and they've also said that, you know, Allah will be questioning those people who will sit on the side and not either help them in any way. Pehla to ye hai ki you try and help them physically if you can. Then you can help them with economic support, or the last thing you can do is to help them with your du'as. Yet it seems like, you know, some of that council, they may be making du'as, but in the circumstances that, in my view, is not sufficient. They have political power. They can actually show the Labour Party leader that without them, Labour Party is nowhere, they cannot survive. So I mean, Muhammad Ali, you obviously a very young man, born and bred in Bradford, educated in this town.
In Manningham, the home of Bradford.
The whole life in Manningham.
Yeah.
I mean, young people like you normally are engaged in other activities. They're looking for a job or starting a business or, you know, doing all sorts of things. What drove you into politics then?
I mean, it was the state of affairs in my area. It was me walking up my street and seeing constant fly tipping, and then I'm questioning myself, why on earth is there fly tipping in my community? And then I'm digging into the problem, the root cause. And then I realised and I found out that there's councillors that operate within the area and oversee what goes on in the area. So then I started asking the questions. But I mean, when you see a constant increase in fly tipping, what that does in your community as a young person, it demoralises you. It makes you feel that you are from a community of no worth, when in reality we know that that is not the case. So in order to increase aspirations, it's about looking after our ward, looking after our community. And then we saw as well that there was a lack of leadership. You see, I never knew who my councillors were. And I can vouch for hundreds of other young people within my ward. No one knows who they are. Why? Because they are picked through nepotism, which fair enough, they can say is a block of vote. But the sad reality is that there was no community engagement. There was no community engagement, there was no community leadership.
That's a very important point you raised. And Councillor Anwar Sahab, I'll be asking the same question. One of the problems within our community has been this thing called the Biradari system, right? And that is very apparent in Bradford to a certain extent.
Yep.
And I'm not sure about Dewsbury and Ravensthorpe and Batley, etc. But there's this notion that, you know, somebody from this particular Biradari stands for election, then everybody has to and must support them. Right? And that is, a lot of people have been on my program and said that is one of the downfalls of our community, because they put candidates up who necessarily sometimes are not the most competent people to be councillors, right? I mean, in your experience, you worked in the council, you know, as a councillor for quite a while, you worked in politics. Do you feel that that is one of the issues we need to tackle?
I think the main issue is having educated people there that can actually string a sentence of English together. I mean, I've come across councillors, present and past, that can't even pronounce their own name properly. And that's what's letting our communities down. And people like Mandali here feel that. Plus, when you've got a senior guy there who's 50 or 60, and you've got someone Mandali's age, Mandali cannot be open with him, because he has that respect barrier. He has to call him uncle, he has to call him cha-cha, mava, or whatever. And that's what's lacking. If you have someone young like Mandali, all the youngsters will approach him. I mean, I'm 33 years old, I was 30 when I was elected. I had so many youngsters that would never raise their concerns to a counsellor. And I had all of them coming to me. Even till today, they come to me. Because it's the age gap, and they feel like they've got a relationship with me and they can talk to me openly. But someone who's there at a massive age gap, they don't feel comfortable in approaching them. And the other thing is, you've got to make yourself available. I mean, I always stated a counsellor role is not part-time, it's a full-time position. I was the first counsellor to come in and actually do a ward surgery by myself.
Wow.
My other two colleagues don't do ward surgeries. One of them's been there nearly 12 years, the other's been there nearly 8 years. They've never done a ward surgery. I'm the only one that does monthly ward surgeries. And my house, as my residents can vouch for me, is open to anybody 24/7. I had people waking me up at 3 o'clock at night for stuff. So
that's one reason I never became a counsellor. I don't think I could hack it. I was asked to become a counsellor in 1976 by a very good old friend of mine, English guy called Jack Wood. And he was a really nice guy. He did a lot of work for our community in the 70s. And he asked me desperately and tried to persuade me. I said, no chance. I'm a chaprasi. I'll always be a clerk. And that's why I was working in public service. But I mean, obviously, this issue now, we've seen young people like, Muhammad Ali, their consciousness is raising.
Absolutely.
They're rising. And they're seeing our councillors in Bradford, in Burnley, well, not in Burnley because they all resigned and they took control of the council, in other towns and cities as well, sitting back and not taking any proactive action against what is going on. Do you feel that that is going to change the mindset of young people when it comes to politics moving forward?
Definitely. I think majority of the youngsters around the country today, with this issue going on in the Middle East, have woken up and they've started to question their elders. I mean, we've always had that system, like you mentioned earlier, blathery politics. And we've also had that system, the mindset that we need to vote Labour, we need to carry on voting Labour. But unfortunately, Labour has lost its values. It's not the great party it once was.
Definitely.
And the only difference between the Labour Party and the Conservative Party now is the colour difference. The Labour Party are red and the Tories are blue. That's the only difference. The policy is the same, the stance is the same. They're pro-establishment parties. And they do not represent our voices or our communities anymore. Time after time, what used to happen was there used to be a puppet Labour councillor and he used to lead the Muslim votes to the Labour Party just for a photo opportunity, or I've met the MP, or I've met the Foreign Minister, or I've met the Prime Minister. This was the tradition in our communities. And now, a lot of the elders, they've retired or they've passed away and stuff, and the youngsters are coming up and they've started to wake up that this is not the way forward. The way forward now is we need to establish a new norm of politics in Britain. We need to find a new party, maybe led by a coalition by George Galloway or Jeremy Corbyn. I could be wrong. Maybe people won't agree with me, but we need people like them leading and having a new party, an alternative choice for the youngsters.
So, I mean, that's a very important point. I mean, Muhammad Ali, obviously we're going to be going to a break in a little while. I hope you found this discussion debate interesting so far. Some really important points have been raised. If you want to share your thoughts and your ideas, please phone in and tell us what you think about the state of politics, and particularly what young people are feeling at this moment. The phone number is 01274 214 209. It will appear on your screen as well. So please, let's have your thoughts, your ideas. Opportunity for you to come and share your thoughts as well. We'll be going to the break in a few moments. Muhammad Ali, obviously what Councillor Anwar has said resonates with you. You've been nodding to everything he said. Do you think that young people are also consciously getting up now, waking up and saying we need to ditch our existing councillors?
Absolutely, absolutely, 100%. The mainstream political party stance is no longer there. The dynamics of politics is changing dramatically. The young people of our district have awoken, and we know that Bradford has the largest youth population. We are the youngest city in Europe.
Yes, you are.
That's an absolute privilege. But name me one young person that's representing us in the town hall. Not one, uncle.
Hold that point, because obviously we're coming back. We're now going for a break. I hope, so far as I say, I found it fascinating. A sitting councillor sharing his thoughts and ideas, and particularly his concerns about the party that he used to represent. and a young man who aspires to be a councillor because he wants to bring about some change, not just in his own local community in Manningham and Bradford, but throughout the whole continent as well and the world. Don't go away. Enjoy your Faluda tea, whatever it is you like. I'll be back with you soon. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.